Hello, Amy here with AC Ashworth and Company, bringing you a video on how to grade using Cameo CAD software system using measurement grading. Measurement grading is the Cameo process that is great for simpler patterns. It's quick, it's fairly easy, but it is not suitable for the more complex patterns that you may need to do. So I just am doing a quick walkthrough of the grading process for measurement grading on Cameo. So first off, you want to have your pattern made that you want to grade, and you will be making a style sheet and a pattern sheet. What I'm showing here is the pattern sheet setup. It's where you identify each of the pattern pieces and what they are, the left side of the body, right side of the body, whether you have any darts, and they show up in the bottom right here in pattern details. And when you've saved that, you press done. Every one of those pieces should be identified there. When you go to your style sheet then, which you would find that same style, that same pattern, the one that you want to grade, you will have made a style sheet for it, and if you haven't, you can do that now. Make your style sheet, identify everything that it's pretty self-explanatory what you need to fill in for the style. You have a place where you can talk about the schedule, and then there's patterns. This will not be populated unless you make a pattern sheet. You'll notice I'm zooming in on petite number, size number 8, because that is the medium size that I want to grade. The one that you grade from should be right in the center. So now we're going to getting started with grading. And the first thing you want to do is create a measurement table. And make that table identify the product that you're going to grade. I have here, if I put Ashworth knit tees, and I have my size ranges, which I've already created in the size range area where you identify what sizes you want to have. They can be small, medium, and large. They can be numerical. They could be different for men and women. But I'm changing the grading name of this grade table to reflect Mrs. Knit Tees, because the size range that I'm going to use is Mrs. Curvy. That is the range that goes from size 4 to size 12. And since I have an 8 and that's my medium, it has to all coincide with that size range. And then I will pick my measurement chart, which is Mrs. Petite and a size 8 petite. And you can see all the sizes over there in the grade increments. Now in grade increments, that is the number, in this case I'm using inches, how much I want it to grow between patterns, between sizes. So from size 4 to size 6, and 6 to 8, and 8 to 12, it's going to grow by 2 inches. And 10 to 12, I want it to grow by 2.5. This information determines, it's what tells the computer how to grade your item. And then you want to save that, and that table should be identified. So if you make another product that's going to use the same grade table as that, it's specific enough that you know what you're grading there and the range. So if you hit next after you've written in the increments, you come up with a table in measurement grading. So you can see all the sizes, what their measurements are. These are body measurements. And it allows you to edit any of these sizes, and that will change the way that it grades. You can edit those sizes in any way that you choose to do so, except for the base size. The base size is a measurement table that you would have set up in advance, that you would have created your original pattern draft from or to. So obviously you're not going to change those. But if you pick a general 2-inch grade or 2.5-inch grade, every piece of that puzzle may not grade exactly the way you want it to. So these are changeable. You can change a little bit. You may find, like in our example, I did not want the length to grow through the whole thing. So I was going to change everything to 62. I'm going to change the height to 62 on all these because this is a petite style. So I can go ahead and change all those and it doesn't get bigger and just go over. I would encourage you, if you're using measurement grading, make sure that all these measurement tables reflect the sizes that you want them to reflect, and make use of that feature where you can edit those. Yeah, again, just make sure that you edit those, go over those very carefully and print them out. You have a print function there. You can print those tables out. So if you go back and it, at the end, it doesn't actually grade the way you want it to, you can go back and kind of see what you need to change and where. So save that. And that is your grading table, your grading size table for the garment that you're going to do, and hit the door to say done. And when we go from there, we can attach the tags. When you attach the tags, go to measurement grading and find the style that you want to grade and go in and attach the tags. Now I've sped it up a little bit here, but what you have on the right hand side are all the major points that are on the garment that you're grading. If you have chosen that this is a top or whatever, then it will give you the major points on that, and you just attach those to what it is. If you're in between and you don't know exactly what point to use, you should use the one that's closest and make a mental note or an actual note of which ones those were. So then at the end, if it doesn't grade the way you want it to, you know which one you want to go back in and change and just grade it over again and see if the shape is more toward what you're looking for. So actually in this one, the computer is circling it for you and asking you what to choose. What do I choose? It's circling in here on that arm side, and I'm going to call it 11 mid arm side. So as you hit the attach button, the circle will go to the next item. And if you have more than one, like you'll see a lot of it's hitting the same place quite a few times. That can happen for various reasons. It can happen if you have a broken line somewhere, if when you were preparing your pattern for grading, you didn't have a continuous line. It can also happen if you have a notch or a mark. In this case, I have markings at the arm side and I want it there, so it doesn't hurt anything to attach that same number multiple times in that one place. It doesn't hurt it at all. It's not anything wrong with that. I also want to point out that in the very lower right-hand corner, it says tag text height. I usually change that to 3/4 because it helps me to see that a little bit better. The numbers and images here can be really small. That's just a comfort thing. You'll see that I'm attaching 0 tags to elements that you don't want to move, such as the fold line, grain line item on it. In anything else, if it for some reason tries to attach to some of your labels, you definitely want to attach a 0 rule to that. On the side seam, you can see the one where it's right in between side seam at waist and side seam at arm side. Through trial and error, I noticed that I liked how it graded if I picked side seam at arm side. So some of those, you just pick the one that's closest and see how it grades. If it doesn't grade the way you want it to, then go back and you can just change that one tag and with the other one that's closer and see how it turns out. Again, the sleeve cap at the shoulder, those are all number 1s. Now how far that goes is going to be, it's going to be determined at how it looks after we're done grading it. That may need to be touched up a little bit to a closer one. In this case, I have a straight sleeve that will not, I don't want it to come in at the bottom. So that's why I'm choosing the underarm at number 9 back at underarm instead of front and back bicep. If it were bicep, it would come in a little bit at the base, and I want it to stay straight, so I'm leaving that same grade rule. And that's how the computer will read it. So all the number ones are at the sleeve cap at shoulder, and how far that goes down, just kind of through trial and error a little bit. I liked it better if the number one rule came down to about where I have it here. And hit next to go to the next item that we're grading, which this is a binding. It's cut wider and longer to match an industrial binder. So I didn't really need it to grade. Sometimes I skip the bindings so I can customize those to the neckline in measurement grading if I don't have specific rules that I apply. In this case, I actually showed you a toggle between the left and right because this binding is both sides, but in this case, it didn't do what I want it to do. Just disregard that. Sometimes you can do that on waistbands and assign rules based on by moving back and forth left to right if you didn't draw it as a mirror image. Again, Cameo grades based on mirror images, so it's better if you just have all left sides and you don't have an image that's already mirrored out. So when you're happy with all the tags that you've put, you push save, and then you go to grade patterns. Pick measurement grading, click next, and you can grade with line types, and it'll be colors if you've set those up in your tables. I picked Ashworth Mrs. T's, which is the grade rule that I wanted to use, and pick my style and go. And it's as easy as hitting the grade button. Just hit the grade button, boom. And all those tags that you've put in will translate into the information on the grade that you've done. And I'm zooming in that on the sleeve, it's a little bit bumpy in that one area. Again, in this case, I've tried it both ways and I couldn't get rid of the bump in measurement grading. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, and I'm going to edit that to get rid of any inconsistencies or anything on that pattern. I go back and I find the pattern I graded and push edit. And in this view, you're able to look at your sizes one at a time, and you can fix them that way. You can also click show base size, so you can see your graded size against the base that it was graded from. So here's where I'm going to get rid of that little bump. I click sleeve on the right hand side so I know what pattern I'm working with. Right click on the point that I want to move, I click move point, and then right click on the point that I want to move and just move my cursor down and straighten out that bump area that I wanted to fix. And I can see this arm size on the smallest size is not the shape that I want. So I pick the back, which is the back, and then I hit move point and I identify the point that I want to move and how I want to move it. I right click on that point and drag it, and I'm able to change the shape of that line, and this is in edit pattern. So you go through, you're going to do every size that way. Just make sure it's exactly the way you want. If there's too many adjustments, it's just really not looking like you want to, you can always close out of there, go back to where you assigned your points, and quite easily just kind of make a note of which points may need to be reassigned. Again, in the points, then in the assigned tags environment, you only have the choices that are there. In measurement grading, you only have the choices that are there. If you have an unusual shape, you don't have the ability to add anything to that. You just can only use what's there and then edit later, like I'm doing here in this example. We're just editing these patterns, dragging the points around to make it look the way we want it to. And if the shape is not, it's maybe got some unusual features to it, that's a situation where you want to look into coordinate grading or point grading. This dragging of the points process that allows you to fix up the patterns, that is essentially how point grading works. It starts with coordinates, and then if you need to adjust one of your coordinate measurements, you can drag, or if you need to add some, you can drag the points around, and then it creates a X and Y coordinate. But I don't want to get into that too much in this video because this is about measurement grading. What I have noticed with measurement grading is that oftentimes the ones that are furthest from the base are the ones that need the most adjustment. So here I'm getting very close to the base size. This is a 6 and the base was size 8. It needs very little adjustment here at the arm side to get it to look the way I want it to. Doesn't really take very much measurement. Another thing that I want to point out is if you edit your measurements and in your measurement table, when it brings up the body measurement table and you say, oh, well, the bodies are going to be, a little bit different from that table, that may be related to how many adjustments you make in the end. I'm not totally sure, but I think that there's a connection there. Let me know in the comments if you know different, or if you have any comment about that. So there's a lot of flexibility here, but you also may end up doing some measurement, some options at the end. So what I do is I like to compare it to the base size. So I choose on the right hand side each size, each pattern, graded pattern individually, compare that to the base size, and then kind of look at them all together and see how the nest looks, how that graded nest looks. And the move point feature is really nice because it doesn't change the length of the lines. So if you're concerned about whether it's going to fit, whether your side seams are going to match each other, or whether the arm size is going to fit into the sleeve, move point is a great feature because you're not actually making new lines or changing them. So then we go through and we'll look at size 10. You notice I skipped 8 because that's our base, and I still have that show base size checked, and just look at size 10 and see how that lines up. It looks like I don't have a bump at the arm, at the sleeve, and looks like the arm side graded pretty well, the shape that I was looking for, but I'm gonna fix it a little bit. Looks like it needs to be lowered a little bit, so I'm going to do that. All of these can be moved around. You can take your time with it. They can also be opened. If you don't want to do it in this environment, you can always open it in pattern design, and it will ask you if you want to explode it. You can do that, or but that's the easiest way to work on it, is if you explode it. Always save it as something else so that you can still have your nest if you should need that. Always save copies, save revs, save versions, so that if you make changes that you decide later that you don't want, you haven't changed your base copy. If in this environment, in editing graded patterns, you don't like it, you can hit the undo button, and that will get rid of your changes that you've made. To modify that pattern, to ungroup it for editing, you hit whatever piece that is on the right hand side there, whether it be front, back, sleeve, neck binding. You would hit that. See this right now, it would be grouped, so you want to choose it over in the pattern details section to ungroup it. And that will do that for you. So some important points that I may have gone over really quickly in the beginning is that you want to have a really cleaned up pattern with no broken lines all around. Another great thing to do when you're preparing your pattern for grading is to remove the seam lines. If you're going to have seam allowance included, you want to remove the seam lines so that you only have one perimeter line to work with. And make a note in the label on the pattern how much seam allowance is included. You can see that on this one I've wrote 3/8 inch seam allowance included and a 1 inch hem allowance. Once the seam lines are gone, you want to make sure you have that information on the pattern. And another thing to make sure that your pattern will grade better, we talked about having the base size. Make sure it's the base within your range. You've set up pattern ranges. The ranges should be no more than 5 sizes at a time, and you have a base that's right in the center of that range. That would be something you need to do. If you have created the pattern in a size that isn't right in the middle, the medium size in the range, use the made to measure feature to take that pattern in the size that you graded it to, or I'm sorry, in the size that you created it, and use the made to measure feature to grade it into the medium size. And then when you have that, you want to make a pattern sheet for that size and a style sheet also. Style sheet and a pattern sheet. So those are your preliminary steps. Another preliminary step that you want to have before you go to grade your patterns is use the delete invalid objects. So if you put any points in there in the process of creating your pattern and forgot they were there, and there's invalid objects, those are all going to be points that the computer is later going to ask you for a grade rule for. So make sure you delete any unwanted objects. So that's all that I have. You want to save your pattern, you can always find that. And like and subscribe. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. And thanks for watching.